Hello everyone, I'm Jane Bonds. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'd just like to say caribou, which is the Swahili word for welcome. Thank you for allowing me to present today and talk about my project in Kenya and the time that I've spent in Kenya. Today's conversation I want to share with you, where is Kimilili, Kenya? And what is the culture like? What are the needs there? And what is overflowing joy? And what's next in this project? So I've been to Kenya 9 times, and my travels have taken me all over Nairobi, Kericho, Kisumu, and then I ended up in Kimilili, which is 6 hours by car, or if you fly, it's about 45 minutes by flight from Nairobi to Kimilili. And I honestly did not know where it was going to go when I was first invited to go to Kenya, teach English as a second language. I was working with a school in Nairobi, and I did that for 4 times, 4 trips, and then I didn't know what was going to happen next. The chairman of the board of the school said, "You promised you were going to speak at my church." And I said, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." And so then it became this big tour that I took, and that's how I met my host family in Kimilili. And so it's Pastor Bernard Tindavali, Margaret Tindavali, and they have 4 children that have been very gracious to me in my work in Kimilili. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. Every time I went, it was just always, I was doing the next step and the next step and the next step. And so what I want to share with you a little bit about is the culture there. I love the food there. One of the main staples is ugali, which you'll see in the top right picture. And then when you go to Lake Victoria, which is on Kisumu, you can have some of their delicious fish, the tilapia that's there. It's very simple food, a little bit plain, but they have this lovely sauce that you can put on it. And they eat with their hands. So you see here, he's got a picture in his hand, and that happens before and after every meal. They wash their hands, which was a shock for me when I first went to Kenya, because it happens to be part of the Hebrew Judaistic when we do Passover. And so I was just like, what are you guys doing? So there's a lot of Israeli customs that are embedded into the Kenyan culture, surprisingly. And you'll notice there's a cat. So we here in the US love our creatures, you know, they come in the house, we pet them, we put clothes on them and all kinds of stuff. That's not how they do it there. So this was kind of an exception. I really don't know why they let this cat in the house, but it was mostly a working animal. They expected that cat to get the mice and the rats, and they fed it out of obligation. They wanted to keep it around, and that was the sum of it. So they thought it was really peculiar when I had the cat in my lap and was holding it. It's very interesting. So meeting the needs there in Kenya, I would take whatever people gave me. One time I took glasses for the elder women so they could see to read. In this particular trip that I took in December and November, I took dresses and shorts and shirts. So perhaps, is anybody familiar with Little Dresses for Africa? Have you heard that particular? Okay, fantastic. A couple of you have. So women across the country make these dresses, and they call them pillowcase dresses. They're pretty simple. And then you can ask, if you're going to a country, you can actually solicit, send and request from Little Dresses for Africa to take those kind of items to wherever it is you're going. And I happen to know the people in this region because my parents lived here a long time, and so they introduced me to the head regional director. And she called me one day in September last year and was like, "When are you going to Africa?" And so she hooked me up with some of these items to take. Another thing that they're not able to get a hold of is Bibles. So I always take whatever Bibles I can. So that's what you see with that young man there. The surprising thing that occurred for me was, among these dresses that I got from these ladies was 150 reusable sanitary pads. And you know, like here in the US, we don't think anything about it. So I just took them along because they were given to me. And when I got there, the ladies were like, "We think we can make these." And I was like, "Seriously? Really?" And they were just so intrigued by the idea and the concept. And so I hired a tailor and made little kits. And in those kits that you see the girls holding there, each had a bar of soap, a pair of panties, and 3 reusable sanitary pads. And they were kind of puzzled at first. They didn't quite know what they were, but they were educated. The lady sitting to the right of me is the principal of that school. And she took her team, so this is her friend who's a homeschool teacher, a home science teacher, and they educated the girls on what those were supposed to be. And then I shared them also with the church that I'm affiliated with, the pastor, that's my host and hostess. And so it was really quite an interesting thing that happened when I went to this wedding. There was this lady there, and she really intrigued me, and I thought, I'm in Africa. If I'm going to be interested in a person and I see somebody that I might be interested in, I better just, go up to that person and say hello. So I did. Turned out she was the first cousin of the pastor that's my host. And they started talking Swahili and discovered this, and I was just blown away that they didn't know each other until that moment. So I introduced them to each other, and she became part of the project. So then what happened was when I came back, I thought, well, perhaps I can create a situation where we can put together a way in which girls can be taught how to make their own sani pads in Kenya. So as you can see, the girls routinely miss 5 to 7 days a month when they begin their period. So you can imagine what that does to their education. So what happens is when their education is not that great, when because they're lacking going to school, and then they don't do well on their tests and such, then their parents are like, well, we're not going to pay for your education because you're not doing well in school. Yeah. So what happens then is they have a few options. They can, number one, go and do some hard labor and try to figure out how to get the sani pads themselves. They can have sex with some guy for 50 bob, and 20% of them get pregnant. Or the tradition is the girls between 9 and 12 get married. Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know, does anybody have anybody they know that's between the 9 and 12?
My granddaughter.
I know, can you imagine her getting married at that age? It's quite appalling. And so for $10 will last the girls 3 years.
Wow.
They can finish their education. They can get married when they want to, have children when they want to, right? So then think about the subsequent generations. How does that affect the next generation? Mom went to school and finished school, right? So now she's going to promote that for her children, right? So it's very, very impactful. And so what happened was, I started this idea of no, you guys already have the sewing machines, you have the church space, and I introduced them to Days for Girls. I don't know, has anybody heard of Days for Girls? There's two projects in Kenya that are associated with Days for Girls. And they went and visited them and found the pattern and the fabric and so on. We were all wondering how they were going to get the fabric to make these sani pads. And so they started this school. And then it was oh, well, we can do the embroidery class. And oh, well, we can do the welding class. And oh, well, we can do the computer class. It just evolved into this whole thing. It was just kind of mind-blowing what happened. So one of the things that really was amazing to me is the person, my hostess, Margaret, said, 100% attendance in school. Do you see that here? They're really enrolled in this project. What we've done so far with this project is 150 sani pads have been given out to girls in high school. So if you think about 150 girls now can finish school, and then that's going to affect their children and so on, right? So I don't even know. What's the value of a girl finishing school? Can someone tell me? What's the value of her children finishing school? I know, right? It's really incredible. As 17 girls are going to graduate from the tailoring class on the 25th of September, and so that is an indication of now they have a way to support themselves with a skill, right? And some of them are going to go on to college, but a large part of them are going to continue on and help the other girls that are coming on the next cohort. There's going to be 6 ladies graduate from the embroidery class. So in Kenya, they have these beautiful things they put on the back of their sofa and the arms and such, and they have beautiful embroidery on them. So they have a embroidery machine that they're teaching the girls, the ladies, I should say, how to use this machine, and they're super excited about it. So they have 2 more months to go, and they'll be able to graduate from that class. Then we have computer classes, each with two computer classes, each with 10 students. And finally, we've completed 2 contracts in the welding class. Now I have realized that I am not the one to take it to the next level. Like, there is so much with this project that it's really mind-boggling. And you noticed that I'm a strong DIY girl. That's what I said in the video. And so I understand, that's why I got involved in this team management leadership program. I understand that I can't do it myself, and that I have been doing a lot of the work myself. And that doesn't work, right? To move something to another level. So I'm looking for finances, people, opportunity, expansion. Like, we're really moving into the next level now. So the things that we need for September, teachers for the computer class, the embroidery class, tailoring instructors. Those are ongoing needs, right, that we have to teach the students. And then more material to buy fabric, to create more of the sandy pads. So the idea that they are looking at there in Kenya is that they want to make the project self-sustaining. If they can get more welding contracts, then they can, with the money that they get from the contracts, then they can pay the instructor and pay the, and so on. And then they can get another contract and so on. And they want to do the same thing with the sandy pads. So the deal with the sandy pads is that they're just learning. So they're not exactly at the quality that they need to be. So they're working on the quality for that. And when they get it to the quality, then they'll be able to sell those products. So, it's just like, anybody ever fly on a plane, the oomph it takes to get off the ground is the hardest part. Once you're in the air, it's pretty good, right? It doesn't take a lot of fuel at that point. So the total we need for this month is $3,250. And as what I'm seeing is that there's an increase in cost as they have added classes. So there's opportunity for more classes, and those are for the knitting machine that they have, and also they have tools to do mechanics on a car. So ways that you can reach me are through international leadership outreach at gmail.com. There's only one L in the middle. Also for donation purposes, elo.churchtrack.com. And also you can connect with me on the Teachable Spirit community on Facebook. Those are some ways you can also take my phone number down. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you have any ideas about what the next steps might look like. I'm in the speculation mode now as to what would be the next steps and where would this project go and who would be the people involved and those kinds of things. So I'd love to have any questions that you have and hear or ideas you have. Please share.
Jean, could you send me that contact information, please? And I
Yes.
can put it out. We do a weekly letter to our members.
Yeah.
And that way, for those of us who are going to forget it today, I can remind them how.
I would be delighted to send that to you, Joe. Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just to dovetail a little bit, which we were talking a little bit about the Middle East earlier, and Africa, Northern Africa is mostly considered Arab. This is not a problem that's just located in Africa. Throughout the Middle East, throughout Africa, the women's education is something that's kind of downplayed / not encouraged. And so it's not surprisingly that we're still it is surprising that we're still dealing with something like this as advanced in the world as we've become. But this is something we are the ladies in our country, and especially the men, we have no idea. This is more the norm in a lot of countries than it is, the norm.
I really appreciate you saying that, Joe. It really is like putting a needle into the ocean or something. I don't know, it's whatever the analogy would be, like there's just so much. And what's incredible to me is that the impact our dollars have in Kenya, you know, $10 for 3 years so they can finish school is pretty amazing. Go ahead.
So you're saying there's 95,000 people approximately. Is this a third world place? Is this no indoor plumbing, dirt roads? What kind of place is it?
I appreciate that question, thank you. So it's a town, and they do have internet, and they do have roads. The roads in Kenya are all interesting, full of potholes and such. You go to Nairobi, you've got a, you know, city just like Seattle, or any other metropolitan area. So it's back and forth, and I love what you're asking, because this is not the rural area. This is still a town. The rural areas are even worse. In those areas, they don't have the ability to put in their crops. So they have, their issue is not just the sani pads, it's also food. So Kimilili is a little bit better off in that respect, and still yet the issue persists that they don't have access to sanitary products. And it affects their education, that's the bottom line. And hence the community, right? You can imagine what that does for a community when the girls are getting pregnant for 50 bob so they can have their sani pad. I know.
Similar to what you're saying here, in Ethiopia and Malawi, we saw folks who had these problems. We saw huge goiters and 30-year-olds, and you know, they picture these things as being great big problems. What's the solution? Iodized salt. Little solution solves a lot of these great big problems. Look at the problem you're solving with a small solution, basically.
Thank you.
All the solution to that was you had to stop these kids from walking on this silica soil. So the solution was shoes.
Yeah.
Problem goes away. It will never show up again.
Right.
And so we see that all through some of these third world countries.
Right.
That just don't get serious about problem solving. And it
Right.
gets to be an emotional thing for me. You think
Right.
that you have lived how many 100 years with these problems and never found a solution for these things?
And I love what you're pointing to, because my mom used to say, why are we pouring so much money into Africa and nothing's happening? So the key to this whole project is they said, we think we can make the sani pads. I'm like, okay, because you know, before that, I was the one bringing the stuff, doing the blah, 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 and it didn't have any effect. But now here it is, okay, I went there in December, January. Something is still going on there, and I'm not in the country.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of it, because they were motivated to do it. I heard someone call my name over here.
Yeah, I'd like to see you go forward with either a nonprofit organization that you might start here, but the first thing we do, and I think Flavian will speak into that, is they have to sit in a meeting of the community where they assess their needs. And then
Right.
you start forming the grants. They just announced a foundation day in November at the district level. I'd really like to see you there talking about forming grants there, that they have to write the grant and it has to come back to us to select it, and you could actually be the person that helps them.
I really appreciate what you're pointing to, Chris, because I already have a meeting that I have every Sunday. So it's 10 a.m. here and 8 p.m. there. And that's a consistent ongoing, and that's what we do every week, is we talk about, okay, well, what's next? You know, what do you see that you need to do? So we do a needs assessment like every week.
Talking about the sanitary pads, we have a project right now in Nepal that we're working on, just waiting to get approval. We went through a rural grant for which we're providing 5,000 sanitary pads to that local community there. So
That's beautiful, Flavian.
You know, it's work that we've been looking at, and I appreciate all the efforts you're putting into that, and I think you and I have had some talks already.
We have.
And I think we got a lot more to discuss and figure out how do we give you a little boost of what it is we're doing.
Thank you, Flavia.
So I think when we shared her contact information, if somebody wants to donate individually, we'll enable it that way. But Flavian will be the talking head from our group as far as doing anything more formally on behalf of the Pasco-Kennewick.
Thank you, Joe. And I just want to say Asante Sana, which is in Swahili. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank
And
you.
so,
Before we head off, I know you're already a fellow Rotarian, but if you compare prices on eBay, ours will get you more than your club. And so with that, I would like to give you the coveted Pasco-Kennewick Rotary.
Thank you.